Pressure is coming. It's not optional. It's not avoidable. And it does not care about your intentions. Pressure is what separates those who rise from those who quietly disappear. Here is the truth most people don't want to hear. The world does not reward emotion. It rewards control. When stress hits, people don't fail because they lack skill. They fail because their nervous system takes over. They react. They panic. They explain. They collapse internally. And while they're busy reacting, someone calmer replaces them. That's the key. Calm is not softness. Calm is dominance under pressure. Every career that ended early didn't end because of talent. It ended because of emotional leakage. Every relationship that fell apart didn't collapse from logic. It collapsed from unmanaged emotion. Every leader who lost respect didn't lose intelligence. They lost composure. Pressure exposes what's already inside you. And if chaos lives inside you, pressure will pull it out. This audiobook is not here to comfort you. It's here to condition you. Because calm people don't beg. They don't rush. They don't explain themselves under stress. They pause. They choose. They respond. Reaction is weakness. Response is power. If you don't train calm deliberately, pressure will train you violently. And the world will not wait for you to catch up. So listen carefully. Because staying calm is no longer optional. It's survival. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we're glad you're with us. This space is built for people who want control, clarity, and discipline under pressure. If our work helps you, your support with a like tells us to keep going. And to create more content like this for you. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1, Pressure reveals who you really are. Pressure is honest. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't negotiate with you. And it does not lie. Pressure does one thing relentlessly. It reveals who you really are. Not who you pretend to be. Not who you are when things are easy. Not who you are when you're comfortable. Who you are when it's hard. That's the key. Pressure doesn't break you. Pressure shows you. You have a choice. You can use pressure as information. Or let it expose habits you've been avoiding your entire life. Why pressure is the great revealer. Most people think pressure causes failure. That's wrong. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes weakness that already exists. Stress pulls back the curtain. When pressure arrives, you don't suddenly change. You default. You default to emotional habits, thought patterns, nervous system conditioning. Pressure doesn't ask who you want to be. It asks who you've trained yourself to be. That's the key. The illusion of control when life is easy. Anyone can look disciplined when nothing is at stake. Anyone can appear calm when deadlines are far away. Stakes are low. No one is watching. That's not character. That's convenience. Character is revealed when time is short. Consequences are real. Stress is unavoidable. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your training. You have a choice. Reaction versus response. Let's get precise. There are only two ways to meet pressure. Reaction or response. Reaction is automatic. Response is deliberate. Reaction is emotional. Response is disciplined. Reaction is fast and sloppy. Response is calm and intentional. Reaction feels justified in the moment. Response looks powerful in hindsight. That's the key. Pressure doesn't reward speed. It rewards control. Real-world example, the career collapse. You've seen this happen. A talented professional. Smart. Capable. Hardworking. Then pressure hits. A tense meeting. A critical email. A public mistake. And suddenly, they snap. They defend emotionally. They explain too much. They blame someone else. One reaction. That's all it takes. Years of credibility erased. By seconds of emotional leakage. Pressure didn't destroy their career. Their reaction did. Why emotional habits hide until pressure arrives. Emotional habits are quiet when life is calm. They hide behind productivity, politeness, routine. But pressure amplifies everything. If you avoid discomfort, pressure exposes avoidance. If you crave validation, pressure exposes insecurity. If you lack boundaries, pressure exposes weakness. It's not about bad luck. It's about untrained responses. That's the key. Pressure is not the enemy. Stop treating pressure like a threat. Pressure is feedback. It tells you where you're unstable, where you're reactive, where you lack discipline. Most people run from this feedback. They numb it. They distract from it. They blame external factors. But disciplined people listen. Because pressure points to the work that must be done. You have a choice. The nervous system under stress. Here's the part most people never understand. Pressure doesn't just affect your thoughts. It affects your nervous system. Under stress, breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tense. Vision narrows. Thinking becomes rigid. That's not personality. That's physiology. And if you've never trained your nervous system, pressure will run it for you. It's not about weakness. It's about conditioning. That's the key. Why intelligence doesn't save you. Some of the smartest people fail hardest under pressure. Why? Because intelligence does not equal emotional regulation. You can be highly skilled, highly educated, highly capable, and still react like a child under stress. Pressure doesn't care about your IQ. It cares about your composure. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need perfect conditions to respond with discipline. The cost of one emotional moment. Let's be honest. Pressure moments are short. The damage lasts long. One reaction can change how people see you. Reduce trust. Close doors quietly. And most people don't even realize when it happens. They think, I was justified. I was stressed. They pushed me. None of that matters. The world doesn't reward explanations. It rewards control. That's the key. Behavioral discipline, what to do instead. Here's what disciplined people do under pressure. They slow down. Not externally. Internally. They pause before speaking. They breathe before responding. They let emotion pass before deciding. You don't need to win the moment. You need to survive it intact. That's the discipline. The myth of, that's just how I am. No. That's how you're trained. Saying, that's just how I am, is emotional laziness disguised as identity. You weren't born reactive. You weren't born impulsive. You were conditioned. And anything conditioned can be retrained. You have a choice. Pressure as a mirror. Pressure is a mirror. It shows you your habits, your defaults, your blind spots. If you don't like what pressure reveals, don't blame pressure. Train yourself. That's the key. Why most people avoid this work? Because it's uncomfortable. Because it requires self-honesty. Because it removes excuses. It's easier to blame stress than to train discipline. But avoiding this work doesn't remove pressure. It just ensures you fail under it again. You have a choice. Reinforcing the core truth. Let's repeat this until it sticks. Pressure doesn't break you. It shows you. It shows whether you react or respond. It shows whether you're disciplined or emotional. It shows whether you're trained or exposed. And pressure is not going away. So the question is simple. Will you train? Or will you keep being revealed? Strong transition to next chapter. Now you understand the truth about pressure. It's not the cause. It's the test. But here's the next level. Pressure doesn't just reveal you once. It keeps score. Because repeated emotional reactions don't just expose you. They replace you. And that's what we're facing next. Let's end this chapter human. You've already felt this. That moment where stress hit and you said something you shouldn't have. That moment where pressure exposed a habit you wish no one had seen. This chapter is not here to shame you. It's here to wake you up. Because awareness is power. And now that you see what pressure reveals, you don't get to ignore it anymore. From this point forward, every stressful moment becomes training. Not punishment. Training. Pressure doesn't break you. It shows you. Chapter 2, Emotional Reactions Are Career Killers. Careers don't usually end with a firing. They end with a moment. A sentence said under stress. A reaction caught on the wrong day. An emotional response that couldn't be taken back. And the person never even realizes it was the moment. That's the danger. Emotional reactions don't announce themselves as career killers. They disguise themselves as being honest, being passionate, or being justified. But the outcome is always the same. Trust drops. Respect erodes. Opportunities quietly disappear. That's the key. Why emotional reactions are so dangerous. Let's be clear. Most people don't lose careers because they're incompetent. They lose careers because they become unpredictable under pressure. Organizations don't fear mistakes. They fear instability. Clients don't fear errors. They fear emotional volatility. Leaders don't get removed for lack of skill. They get removed for lack of control. You have a choice. Develop emotional discipline. Or slowly make yourself replaceable. The illusion of, I was right. This is where most people lose. They say, I was right. They deserved it. I had to speak up. None of that matters. Careers are not destroyed by being wrong. They are destroyed by being emotionally unsafe. You can be right and still lose. That's the key. Real-world example, the high performer who fell. You've seen this person. Top performer. Results-driven. Highly valued. Then pressure increases. Deadlines tighten. Scrutiny rises. Stress builds. And one day, they snap in a meeting. They send an emotional email. They publicly challenge authority. They feel justified. But leadership feels something else. Risk. From that moment on, they're watched more closely. They're trusted less. They're no longer safe. Performance didn't change. Perception did. And perception decides careers. Why organizations replace reactors? Organizations don't replace people emotionally. They replace them strategically. They ask, can we rely on this person under pressure? Do they stabilize or destabilize the environment? Do they calm situations or escalate them? If the answer is, they react, the decision is already made. Reaction is weakness. Response is power. The hidden cost of emotional leakage. Emotional reactions leak information. They reveal insecurity, fear, ego, attachment. And once revealed, they can't be unseen. People adjust their behavior around you. They stop challenging you directly. Stop trusting you with sensitive information. Stop seeing you as leadership material. Not because you're bad. Because you're reactive. That's the key. Why explaining yourself makes it worse. After an emotional reaction, people often explain. They justify. They rationalize. They over-communicate. That doesn't repair damage. It compounds it. Because explanations after reactions signal loss of control, emotional neediness, desire for validation. Calm people don't explain. They adjust behavior. You don't need their permission to be composed. You don't need to convince anyone you're stable. Stability shows itself. The career math nobody talks about. Here's the math. One emotional reaction can outweigh 10 good performances, years of consistency, a strong reputation. Why? Because emotion under pressure is weighted heavier. It predicts future behavior. And careers are bets on future reliability. That's the key. Why smart people still lose careers. Intelligence doesn't save you. Talent doesn't save you. Experience doesn't save you. Only composure does. Because stress doesn't ask how smart you are. It asks how controlled you are. You have a choice. Train emotional regulation. Or let intelligence be overshadowed by impulse. The myth of passion. People excuse reactions with passion. Passion without discipline is liability. Controlled passion builds careers. Uncontrolled passion ends them. The world rewards intensity with containment. Not emotional overflow. That's the key. Emotional reactions create a pattern. One reaction might be forgiven. 2 create concern. 3 create a label. And labels end careers quietly. Not publicly. Not dramatically. Silently. Opportunities stop coming. Meetings stop including you. Decisions happen without you. You don't get fired. You get phased out. Behavioral discipline, what to stop doing. Stop reacting immediately. Stop responding when emotionally charged. Stop defending yourself in the moment. Those habits feel natural. They are destructive. You don't need to win the moment. You need to protect your trajectory. That's the key. Behavioral discipline, what to do instead. Here's the replacement behavior. Delay your response. Not forever. Just long enough for emotion to settle. Under pressure. Say less. Breathe deeper. Slow your movements. Calm buys you leverage. Reaction gives it away. Why calm people get promoted? Promotion isn't about output alone. It's about trust. Calm people stabilize teams. That escalate conflict. Think clearly under stress. Leadership notices this immediately. Because calm is rare. And rare qualities rise. That's the key. Emotional control is a career skill. Treat emotional regulation like any other skill. You wouldn't show up unprepared technically. So why show up emotionally untrained? Discipline is preparation for pressure. You don't rise when pressure hits. You reveal what you practiced. You have a choice. The long game. Careers are marathons. Emotional reactions are sprints. They feel urgent. They feel necessary. They sabotage the long game. Quiet discipline wins over time. Always. Reinforcing the core truth. Say it again until it sticks. Emotional reactions are career killers. Not because people are cruel. Because systems prefer stability. Because pressure rewards control. Because calm people outlast emotional ones. That's the key. Strong transition to Chapter 3. Now you understand the cost. Emotional reactions don't just hurt feelings. They end trajectories. But here's the deeper truth. Calm is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And skills can be trained. Let's pause and be real. You've reacted before. Everyone has. This chapter is not about perfection. It's about pattern interruption. The next time stress hits, you'll remember this. You'll feel the urge to react. And you'll pause. That pause is power. That pause protects your future. Because once you see how reactions destroy careers, you don't get to ignore it anymore. This is the work most people avoid. If you're still here, you're doing it. Chapter 3, Calm is a skill, not a personality trait. Let's remove the lie immediately. Calm is not something you're born with. It's not a personality trait. It's not luck. And it's not reserved for naturally confident people. Calm is trained. And if you are not calm under pressure, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're untrained. That's the key. You have a choice. Train calm deliberately. Or let stress decide who you become. The dangerous myth about calm people. Most people believe calm people are just wired differently. They say, they're just chill. They don't care as much. That's just their personality. That belief is dangerous. Because it removes responsibility. It tells you, this isn't something I can learn. That's false. Calm is not absence of emotion. Calm is control of emotion. And control is a skill. Why this belief keeps people stuck. When you believe calm is personality-based, you stop training. You excuse reactions. You justify outbursts. You accept emotional instability as identity. You say, "That's just how I am under pressure." No. That's how you've been conditioned. You weren't born reactive. You were trained by chaos, environment, habits, and repetition. And anything trained can be retrained. You have a choice. Calm is a nervous system skill. This is not philosophy. This is biology. Under pressure, your nervous system decides first. Not your logic. Stress activates. Shallow breathing. Muscle tension. Tunnel vision. Impulse-driven thinking. If your nervous system is untrained, you will react, even if you know better. That's why knowledge alone doesn't change behavior. Training does. That's the key. Why trying to be calm fails. Most people try to be calm after stress hits. That's too late. You don't install brakes while the car is skidding. Calm must be trained before pressure arrives. That training happens in small moments, daily habits, repeated exposure to discomfort. You don't rise to calm. You default to it. Real-world example, same pressure, different outcome. Two people face the same pressure. Same deadline. Same stakes. Same environment. One panics. Rushes. Overreacts. The other slows down. Speaks clearly. Moves deliberately. Same intelligence. Same role. Different conditioning. Calm wasn't personality. It was preparation. That's the key. Why calm people seem unbothered. Calm people feel stress. They're not numb. They just don't obey it. Emotion passes through them. It doesn't command them. They notice the spike. They regulate it. They choose response. That ability creates the illusion of effortlessness. But it's earned. The daily habits that train calm. Let's get practical. Calm is trained through microdiscipline. Here's how it's built. 1. Controlled breathing under mild stress. You slow the body, the mind follows. 2. Delayed reactions. You wait before responding, even when it feels urgent. 3. Exposure to discomfort without escape. You stay present instead of distracting yourself. These are not dramatic acts. They are boring. And that's why they work. Why calm feels unnatural at first. Calm will feel wrong initially. Your nervous system is used to reacting. Silence feels unsafe. Slowness feels risky. Pausing feels weak. That's conditioning talking. Discipline always feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is proof you're retraining. That's the key. Calm is not suppression. Important distinction. Calm is not bottling emotion. Suppression explodes later. Calm is regulation. You acknowledge emotion without letting it drive behavior. That takes practice. But once trained, it becomes automatic. The cost of not training calm. If you don't train calm, stress decides your tone. Emotion decides your words. Pressure decides your behavior. And behavior decides outcomes. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. That's the key. Why calm creates authority. People follow calm. They trust calm. They defer to calm. Because calm signals safety, competence, control. Even when calm says very little. You don't need to dominate conversations. Your composure does the work for you. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to pause. Behavioral discipline, what to practice daily. Here is your training protocol. Pause before responding, always. Even 2 seconds matters. Lower your voice under stress. Calm tone trains internal calm. Reduce unnecessary words. Silence stabilizes you. Practice discomfort without distraction. No phone. No escape. Just regulation. This is how calm is built. Why calm people last longer. Careers. Relationships. Leadership. Longevity belongs to calm people. Because pressure increases over time. Those who rely on emotion burn out. Those who rely on discipline adapt. That's the key. Reinforcing the core truth. Repeat it until it replaces the lie. Calm is a skill. Calm is trained. Calm is installed through discipline. It is not personality. It is preparation. You have a choice. Now you understand this. Calm is not something you wait for. It's something you train. But to train calm effectively, you must understand what you're training. Because behind every reaction is a system running the show. And that system is your nervous system. Let's end this chapter honestly. If you've ever told yourself, I just lose it under pressure, this chapter was for you. Not to judge you. To free you. Because once you realize calm is a skill, you stop labeling yourself as broken. And you start training like someone serious. You won't get this perfect overnight. But each pause, each breath, each restrained reaction rewires you. Calm isn't who you are. It's who you're becoming. Stay with the process. This part matters. Chapter 4. Your nervous system is running your life. Let's tell the truth most people never hear. You are not reacting because you're weak. You are reacting because your nervous system is in charge. Right now. Not your logic. Not your intentions. Not your goals. Your biology. And until you understand that, you will keep losing battles you swear you're smart enough to win. That's the key. You have a choice. Train your nervous system. Or let it quietly dictate your entire life. Why willpower alone keeps failing you. Most people try to think their way out of stress. They tell themselves, stay calm. Don't overreact. Be rational. And then pressure hits. And none of that works. Why? Because under stress, thinking comes second. The nervous system decides first. By the time logic arrives, your body has already chosen reaction or response. That's not weakness. That's wiring. The nervous system's only job. Your nervous system has one job. Survival. Not success. Not reputation. Not long-term goals. survival. And under pressure, it doesn't care about nuance. It asks only one question. Am I safe? If the answer feels like no, it activates fight, flight, or freeze. That's the key. Most emotional reactions are survival responses. Misfiring in modern environments. Why modern life triggers ancient responses. Your nervous system evolved for physical danger. Predators. Scarcity. Immediate threats. But modern pressure looks different. Emails. Deadlines. Confrontations. Social judgment. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference. It reacts as if your life is on the line. Heart rate spikes. Breathing shortens. Thinking narrows. And suddenly, you're not choosing. You're reacting. Reaction is not a decision. Let's be precise. A reaction is not a choice. It's a reflex. And reflexes don't care about consequences. That's why people say things they regret, send messages they shouldn't, escalate situations unnecessarily. Later, they say, I don't know what came over me. Now you do. Your nervous system took over. Why pressure feels so urgent? Pressure compresses time. Everything feels immediate. You feel like you must respond now. Speak now. Act now. That urgency is artificial. It's created by nervous system arousal. Calm people don't rush. Because their nervous system isn't screaming. That's the difference. Real-world example, same situation, different nervous systems. Two people receive the same critical message. One reacts instantly. Defensive. Emotional. Over-explaining. The other pauses. Breathes. Responds hours later. Chooses words carefully. Same situation. Different nervous system states. And the outcome? One loses leverage. The other gains respect. That's the key. Why you keep repeating the same patterns. Patterns don't live in your thoughts. They live in your nervous system. If you've reacted the same way for years, it's not because you're stubborn. It's because your nervous system learned that response early and never got retrained. Awareness alone doesn't change that. Training does. You have a choice. The body leads, the mind follows. Here's a rule you must remember. The body leads. The mind follows. When the body is calm, thoughts slow. Perception widens. Decisions improve. When the body is stressed, thoughts race. Perception narrows. Decisions degrade. Trying to think calmly in a stressed body is like trying to steer a car with no brakes. That's the key. Why calm people breathe differently? Watch calm people under pressure. Their breathing slows. Not accidentally. Slow breathing sends a signal. There is no immediate threat. That signal downshifts the nervous system. You don't calm the mind first. You calm the body. The lie of, I work best under pressure. No. You work fast under pressure. Not best. Pressure reduces creativity. Pressure reduces nuance. Pressure reduces judgment. It produces action, not wisdom. Disciplined people create calm before pressure hits. That's why they outperform. Training the nervous system, this is the work. Here's the discipline most people avoid. You must train your nervous system. The same way you train muscles. Slowly. Repeatedly. Deliberately. Here's how. Behavioral discipline number 1, breathe on command. Not when calm. When stressed. Inhale through the nose. Slow. Deep. Exhale longer than you inhale. This tells your nervous system, you are safe. Do this before speaking. Always. That pause is power. Behavioral discipline number 2, delay response. Urgency is a trap. When you feel pressure, delay. Minutes. Hours. Sometimes days. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need to respond immediately to prove competence. Calm responses carry more weight. That's the key. Behavioral discipline number 3, train discomfort without escape. Most people escape discomfort instantly. Phone. Noise. Distraction. That teaches the nervous system. Discomfort is dangerous. Instead, stay. Sit with tension. Feel it pass. This retrains your system to tolerate pressure. Without reacting. Why this feels hard at first? Because you're breaking an old agreement. Your nervous system is used to being obeyed. At first, it will protest. It will create urgency. Emotion. Impulse. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means retraining is working. That's the key. Why emotional people feel exhausted. Constant nervous system activation is draining. That's why reactive people burn out. Calm people conserve energy. They don't spike stress unnecessarily. They last longer. Longevity belongs to regulation. The nervous system and authority. People sense nervous system states subconsciously. They feel when someone is grounded, centered, regulated, and they feel when someone is anxious, reactive, unstable. Authority doesn't come from words. It comes from state. That's the key. This is not therapy. This is training. Let's be clear. This is not about healing the past. This is about operational control. You're not here to analyze feelings. You're here to command responses. Calm is not comfort. Calm is readiness. Reinforcing the core truth. Repeat this until it changes how you see yourself. Your nervous system is running your life. Unless you train it deliberately. Awareness is not enough. Discipline is required. You have a choice. Now you understand the machine beneath your reactions. But knowledge alone won't protect you. Because when pressure hits, words fail. And what you say next matters more than how you feel. Which brings us to the next discipline. Let's slow this down for a moment. If you've ever said, I knew better, but I still reacted. This chapter explains why. You weren't broken. You were overruled. And now you know who was in charge. That knowledge changes responsibility. From now on, when stress rises, you don't argue with emotion. You regulate your body. You breathe. You pause. You choose. Not perfectly, but deliberately. Because the moment you train your nervous system, your entire life begins to stabilize. Most people stop before this point. You didn't. Chapter 5. Stop explaining yourself under stress. The moment you start explaining yourself under stress, you give away power. Not because you're wrong. Not because you failed. But because explanation is often emotional leakage disguised as communication. Let's say this clearly. Calm people do not explain themselves under pressure. Reactive people do. That's the key. You have a choice. Protect your authority. Or dilute it with words you didn't need to say. Why explaining feels so urgent. When stress hits, your nervous system wants relief. Explaining feels like relief. You want to clarify, defend, be understood, correct perception immediately. But that urge is not strategic. It's emotional. And emotion does not care about long-term consequences. That's the key. Explanation versus communication. Let's separate two things people confuse. Communication is deliberate. Explanation is reactive. Communication is chosen. Explanation is forced by discomfort. Communication moves situations forward. Explanation exposes insecurity. When you explain under stress, you are not adding clarity. You are signaling instability. Why explanation weakens your position? Explanation shifts the frame. Instead of standing on your decision, you move into defense. Defense tells people, you feel threatened. You need approval. You're uncertain. Even if none of that is true. Perception matters more than intention. That's the key. Real-world example. The over-explaining professional. You've seen this. A professional makes a decision. Pressure follows. Questions come in. And suddenly, long emails, detailed justifications, emotional tone, what they think they're doing, being thorough, what others see, nervousness. The more they explain, the less confident they appear. Not because they're wrong. Because calm authority does not chase understanding. Why leaders say less under pressure. Watch strong leaders under stress. They don't rush to explain. They pause. Speak briefly. Let decisions stand. They understand something most people don't. Authority is felt, not argued. That's the key. Explaining is a control attempt. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Explaining under stress is often an attempt to control perception. You want to fix how you're seen, prevent misunderstanding, reduce discomfort immediately. But control gained through explanation is fragile. It collapses under scrutiny. Calm presence is stronger. The trap of, if they just understood. People tell themselves, if I explain it better, they'll get it. Maybe. But often, they already understand. They're testing your stability. And the more you explain emotionally, the more you fail the test. That's the key. Why silence feels risky. Silence feels dangerous to reactive people. It feels like losing control, appearing weak, letting others define the narrative. But silence does something powerful. It forces others to sit with uncertainty. And uncertainty reveals who actually has leverage. Calm people are comfortable letting silence do the work. The cost of over-explaining. Over-explaining does damage quietly. It reduces perceived confidence, signals emotional attachment, invites further questioning. Once you explain once, people expect it again and again. Soon, every decision requires justification. That's not leadership. That's negotiation with pressure. Why calm people are brief. Brevity is not coldness. It's control. Calm people speak less because they're not rushed. They're not defensive. They trust their decisions. Words are used precisely, not emotionally. That's the key. Explaining trains your nervous system incorrectly. Every time you explain under stress, you teach your nervous system. Pressure requires justification. That creates a loop. Stress, explanation, relief. The relief is temporary. The habit becomes permanent. Instead, you must train. Stress, pause, response. That's discipline. Behavioral discipline. What to stop doing. Stop explaining immediately after pressure hits. Stop defending decisions emotionally. Stop filling silence with words. These habits feel helpful. They are weakening you. You don't need their permission to be composed. You don't need to be understood instantly. Behavioral discipline. What to do instead. Here's the replacement behavior. Pause. One builds understanding. The other leaks power. Timing matters. Always. The long-term advantage. When you stop explaining under stress, people challenge you less. Decisions stand longer. Pressure decreases. Because the system learns. This person does not react. Reaction invites pressure. Response reduces it. Reinforcing the core truth. Say it again until it sticks. Explaining under stress is emotional leakage. Silence under pressure is strength. You have a choice. Every time. You've learned how to protect your authority with silence. But silence alone is not enough. Because pressure doesn't just come from situations. It comes from attachment. And the next discipline removes leverage entirely. Let's be honest for a moment. You've explained yourself before. When you didn't need to. We all have. This chapter isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming steady. The next time pressure hits, and words rush to your throat, you'll remember this. You'll pause. And in that pause, you'll feel the power shift. Not because you said more. Because you didn't. You don't need to explain yourself. You just need to stay consistent. Chapter 6, Detachment is how you stay unshakable. If someone can control your emotions, they can control your behavior. And if they can control your behavior under pressure, they can replace you. That's the truth most people avoid. Attachment creates leverage. Detachment removes it. That's the key. You have a choice. Stay emotionally attached. Or stay unshakable. What detachment really means, and what it doesn't. Let's clear this up immediately. Detachment does not mean you don't care. You're cold. You're indifferent. You lack values. Detachment means you're not emotionally controlled by outcomes. You can care deeply. Without being destabilized. You can be committed. Without being reactive. That's the key. Why attachment makes you predictable. Attachment narrows you. When you're attached to being liked, being validated, a specific outcome, a specific role, pressure has an entry point. People sense it. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. And once felt, leverage exists. Reaction is weakness. Response is power. Real-world example, the attached professional. A professional becomes attached to a position. Not just the job. The identity. Then pressure appears. Feedback feels personal. Criticism feels threatening. Uncertainty feels dangerous. They react. Not because they're incompetent. Because attachment hijacks stability. Pressure didn't shake them. Attachment did. Why detachment creates calm automatically? Detachment lowers stakes internally. When stakes drop inside you, nervous system calms. Perspective widens. Choices increase. You stop needing to win every moment. You start choosing strategically. That's the key. Attachment and emotional reactivity. Every emotional reaction has a root. That root is attachment. You react when something you're attached to feels threatened. Status. Control. Approval. Certainty. Remove the attachment. The reaction loses fuel. Why calm people seem hard to shake? Calm people are not fearless. They are unattached. They don't cling to immediate outcomes, other people's opinions, short-term validation. So pressure has nothing to grab. That's why they look grounded. Detachment is a strategic advantage. In negotiations, leadership, conflict, the person who needs it less controls the interaction. Neediness creates urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. Detachment buys time. And time creates leverage. That's the key. The fear of detachment. People resist detachment because they think, if I detach, I'll lose motivation. If I detach, I won't care. If I detach, I'll become passive. The opposite is true. Detachment sharpens focus. It removes noise. It keeps emotion from interfering with execution. Why detachment feels uncomfortable at first? Attachment feels familiar. It gives identity. It gives meaning. It gives emotional spikes. Detachment feels empty at first. That emptiness scares people. But that space is where discipline operates. That's the key. Attachment triggers explanation and overreaction. Notice the pattern. When you're attached, you explain more, defend faster, react emotionally. When you're detached, you say less, pause more, respond cleanly. Detachment stabilizes behavior. Behavioral discipline, identify attachments. You cannot detach from what you refuse to see. Ask yourself, what outcome do I need too badly? Whose approval destabilizes me? What loss scares me into reaction? Awareness precedes detachment. You have a choice. Behavioral discipline, practice outcome independence. Outcome independence means this. You do your best, without tying your emotional state to the result. You execute fully. Then you release. This doesn't reduce effort. It improves it. Because emotion no longer interferes. That's the key. Behavioral discipline. Let go of immediate resolution. Reactive people need closure immediately. Detached people can wait. Waiting is power. When you don't rush to resolve, you see more. You hear more. Others reveal themselves. Silence plus detachment is a powerful combination. Why detachment prevents burnout? Burnout comes from emotional overinvestment. Caring without regulation. Detachment creates sustainability. You can show up consistently without draining yourself. Longevity belongs to the detached. Detachment and respect. People respect those who aren't desperate, aren't reactive, aren't emotionally volatile. Detachment communicates. I'm stable regardless of outcome. That stability attracts trust. That's the key. What happens when you detach consistently? Over time, pressure decreases. People test you less. Emotional chaos avoids you. Because the system learns. This person doesn't react. Reaction invites pressure. Detachment dissolves it. Reinforcing the core truth. Say it until it becomes instinct. Attachment creates leverage. Detachment removes it. You don't need their permission to let go. You don't need validation to stay grounded. You have a choice. You now know how to remove emotional leverage. But detachment alone is not enough. Because even detached people can lose control. If they rush, the next discipline decides who controls the interaction. Let's end this chapter honestly. You already know where you're attached. That situation. That outcome. That approval you don't want to admit you care about. This chapter isn't asking you to abandon your life. It's asking you to stop letting it control you. The next time pressure hits, and you feel that pull, you'll notice it. And in that noticing, you'll loosen your grip. That looseness is strength. Because when nothing inside you is clinging, nothing outside you can shake you. This channel exists to sharpen your mindset, not to entertain your emotions. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. Chapter 7, Calm people control the pace. The person who controls the pace controls the outcome. Read that again. Not the loudest person. Not the smartest person. Not the most emotional person. The calm one. Because speed is not power. Pace is power. That's the key. You have a choice. Let pressure rush you. Or make pressure wait. Why pressure always tries to speed you up? Pressure has one main tactic. Urgency. It wants you to respond faster. Decide quicker. Speak immediately. Because speed shuts down judgment. When you rush, you simplify. When you simplify, you make mistakes. That's not an accident. That's how pressure wins. The illusion of urgency. Most urgency is manufactured. Emails marked urgent. Messages demanding immediate answers. Situations framed as now or never. Very few things are truly urgent. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It feels urgency as danger. And danger triggers reaction. That's the key. Why calm people slow things down? Calm people don't fight urgency directly. They ignore it. They slow their breathing. They slow their speech. They slow their movements. And in doing so, they force the environment to adjust to them. That's real control. Real-world example, the rushed versus the calm. Two people in the same meeting. One speaks quickly, interrupts, explains excessively. The other waits, speaks last, uses fewer words. Who do people listen to? The calm one. Because calm changes the rhythm of the room. Why speed signals weakness under pressure? Fast responses under stress communicate anxiety, neediness, fear of losing control. Even if your answer is correct, haste communicates more than content. That's the key. Calm people decide when things happen. Reactive people are dragged by events. Calm people choose timing. They decide when to respond, when to speak, when to act. Timing is a strategic asset. You don't need their permission to take time. Why silence controls pace? Silence creates space. Space creates discomfort. And discomfort reveals who is stable and who is desperate. When you stay silent, others fill the gap. Others reveal priorities. Others show emotion. Calm people let silence work for them. The pace trap in arguments. Arguments escalate because of speed. Words pile on words. Emotions stack. Logic disappears. Slow the pace. And the argument collapses. Lower your voice. Pause longer. Respond less. You don't win arguments by out-talking. You win by outlasting. That's the key. Why calm people are hard to manipulate. Manipulation requires speed. It relies on urgency, pressure, confusion. Calm people break manipulation by slowing down. They say, "I'll think about it. Let's revisit this. Not right now." And suddenly, leverage disappears. Behavioral discipline, slow your physical movements. Your body sets the pace before your words. Under pressure, move slower. Sit still. Avoid fidgeting. This signals calm to your nervous system and to others. The body leads. Always. Behavioral discipline, speak last when possible. You don't need to fill space. Let others talk first. Information is power. Silence gathers information. Calm people speak after the landscape is clear. Behavioral discipline, delay decisions strategically. Immediate decisions under pressure are rarely optimal. Unless safety is involved, wait. Time reduces emotion. Emotion distorts judgment. That's the key. Why slowing down feels risky. Slowing down feels like losing control to reactive people because they equate speed with competence. That belief is false. Competence is calm execution, not rushed movement. The discomfort you feel slowing down is withdrawal from urgency addiction. Urgency addiction, yes, it's real. Some people live in urgency. They feel alive only when rushed. That creates chaos. Calm feels boring at first. But boring is stable. And stability wins long term. How pace builds authority over time. When people see you unrushed, unreactive, deliberate. They stop pushing. They adjust to your rhythm. You become the reference point. That's leadership without force. Pace in high-stakes moments. Under real pressure. Emergencies. Conflict. Negotiation. Calm people slow down even more. Because precision requires space. Speed multiplies errors. Repetition anchor. Say it until it becomes instinct. Speed is not power. Pace is power. Reaction is weakness. Response is power. You have a choice. What happens when you control the pace? Over time, fewer crises, fewer emotional spikes, fewer forced decisions. Because when you don't rush, others can't rush you. Pressure loses its grip. You now understand pace. But pace alone isn't enough. If your words betray you, because even calm people lose authority when they speak too much. The next discipline sharpens everything. Let's bring this home. Think about the last time you felt pressured. You probably rushed, spoke too fast, moved too quickly. Not because you're incapable, because you were trained to obey urgency. This chapter gives you permission to slow everything down, not to escape, but to command. Next time pressure shows up, you won't fight it. You'll let it wait. And in that waiting, you'll feel the shift. Because calm people don't chase outcomes. They control the pace. What you repeat, you become. Chapter 8, Silence is a Strategic Weapon. Most people talk themselves out of power. They speak too soon. They explain too much. They fill silence because it makes them uncomfortable. And every word they add takes leverage away. Here's the truth. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. That's the key. You have a choice. Use silence deliberately. Or leak power every time pressure appears. Why silence makes people uncomfortable? Silence creates a vacuum. And humans rush to fill vacuums. When silence appears, anxiety rises. Assumptions form. People reveal themselves. Reactive people speak to escape discomfort. Calm people stay silent. And let discomfort work for them. That's the difference. Why talking feels like safety. Talking feels like control. It feels like managing perception. Steering the narrative. Reducing uncertainty. But under pressure, talking is often panic disguised as communication. Silence requires regulation. That's why it's rare. Silence and authority. Authority does not rush to explain. Authority does not chase understanding. Authority is comfortable letting others sit with uncertainty. That's the key. When you speak less, words carry more weight. Decisions stand longer. People listen harder. Silence sharpens presence. Real-world example, the silent decision-maker. Watch experienced leaders. In meetings, they listen more than they speak. Pause before responding. End conversations with few words. When they finally speak, everyone pays attention. Not because they dominate. Because silence built gravity. Why silence creates leverage? Leverage comes from asymmetry. When you speak less, Others reveal priorities. Others expose emotion. Others negotiate against themselves. Silence lets information flow toward you. Information is power. That's the key. The mistake of filling silence. When someone pauses after you speak, your instinct may be to fill the gap. Don't. That pause is data. It tells you they're thinking. They're uncertain. They're recalculating. If you fill it, you steal your own advantage. Silence in conflict. In conflict, silence is disruptive. Arguments require fuel. Words are fuel. Remove the words. The fire dies. When someone escalates emotionally, don't match tone. Don't rush to respond. Let silence slow the interaction. Calm silence resets the dynamic. Why silence feels risky? Silence feels like surrender. To reactive people. Because they equate talking with control. That belief is false. Control comes from emotional regulation. Silence proves regulation. That's the key. Silence is not weakness. Let's correct a misconception. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is selection. You are choosing when to speak, what to say, how much to reveal. That selectivity signals strength. The nervous system and silence. Silence forces your nervous system to tolerate stillness. This is training. Most people escape stillness instantly. They talk. They scroll. They distract. Silence retrains your system to stay calm. Without stimulation. That's power. Why calm people use fewer words? Calm people don't talk less because they have nothing to say. They talk less because they don't need to prove anything. They trust timing. They trust restraint. They trust that presence carries meaning. Behavioral discipline. Pause after speaking. After you speak, stop. Let the silence land. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Especially then. This pause increases authority. Prevents over-explaining. Forces others to respond. Practice it deliberately. Behavioral discipline. Answer with fewer words. Short answers feel risky at first. That's conditioning talking. Short answers. Reduce emotional leakage. Increase clarity. Signal confidence. You don't need their permission to be concise. Behavioral discipline. Let others speak first. Silence invites disclosure. When you don't rush, people talk more. Reveal more. Show you what matters. Listening is not passive. It's strategic. Silence in negotiation. In negotiation, silence is lethal. After making an offer, stop talking. Let the other side react. People often lower demands, add concessions, justify themselves, because silence pressures them internally. That's leverage. Why silence breaks manipulation? Manipulation relies on urgency and confusion. Silence introduces time. Time dissolves pressure. When manipulated, say less. Pause longer. Manipulation collapses when it can't rush you. Silence and emotional control. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you reinforce discipline. You teach your nervous system I am safe without speaking. That training compounds. Over time, calm becomes default. The long-term effect of silence. Consistent silence does something profound. People stop provoking you. Stop pushing boundaries. Stop testing reactions. Because the system learns. This person doesn't react. Reaction invites pressure. Silence dissolves it. Repetition anchor. Say it until it becomes instinct. Silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. You have a choice. Speak to relieve discomfort. Or stay silent to maintain control. When silence is most powerful. Silence is most powerful. After emotional statements. During tension. When others expect reaction. That's when silence shifts power. What silence does internally. Silence creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity creates choice. Choice is freedom. That's the key. You now understand silence. But silence alone is not enough. If your identity depends on outcomes. Because even quiet people lose stability. When their self-worth is on the line. The next chapter removes the final pressure point. Let's end this chapter honestly. You've spoken before. When silence would have protected you. Everyone has. This chapter isn't asking you to disappear. It's asking you to be deliberate. The next time silence appears, and you feel the urge to fill it, pause. Feel the discomfort. Stay. That moment is where power shifts. Because silence doesn't make you invisible. It makes you unshakable. Results don't need permission. They speak for themselves. Talk is cheap. Chapter 9, Self-Worth That Can't Be Touched. If your self-worth can be touched, it can be shaken. If it can be shaken, it can be controlled. And if it can be controlled, you will never be calm under pressure. That's the truth. Most people don't lose composure because of stress. They lose it because stress threatens how they see themselves. Unshakable calm requires untouchable self-worth. That's the key. You have a choice. Build self-worth that stands alone. Or keep reacting to protect an identity that's always under threat. Why pressure attacks self-worth first? Pressure doesn't start with circumstances. It starts with identity. When pressure hits, it asks silently, am I good enough? What will this say about me? What if I fail? Those questions don't come from logic. They come from conditional self-worth. And conditional self-worth is fragile. Conditional versus unconditional self-worth. Most people build self-worth on conditions. Results. Praise. Titles. Approval. Performance. When those conditions are met, they feel stable. When they're threatened, they collapse. That's the key. Unconditional self-worth does not fluctuate with outcomes. It doesn't rise with praise. It doesn't fall with criticism. It stands. Why emotional reactions are identity defenses. Every emotional overreaction is a defense. Not of logic. Of self-image. People don't react because a situation is difficult. They react because the situation threatens who they believe they are. That's why feedback hurts. That's why criticism stings. That's why pressure destabilizes. It's not about the event. It's about the identity attached to it. Real-world example, the high performer who cracks. You've seen this. Someone competent, talented, capable. But under pressure, they unravel. Why? Because their self-worth is tied to being seen as competent. So when competence is questioned, the nervous system panics. They defend. They explain. They overreact. Not because they're weak. Because their self-worth is exposed. Why calm people don't take things personally? Calm people don't take things personally. Because nothing is at stake internally. Feedback is information, not a verdict. Criticism is input, not an identity attack. When self-worth is untouchable, pressure loses its bite. That's the key. Self-worth is not confidence. Let's be precise. Confidence fluctuates. Self-worth does not. Confidence depends on conditions. Preparation. Skill. Context. Self-worth is independent. You can feel uncertain without feeling diminished. That distinction is everything. Why external validation is a trap. External validation feels good, but it trains dependency. If praise lifts you, criticism will crush you. That's the trade-off. Calm requires internal grounding. You don't need their permission to value yourself. You don't need applause to stay steady. How self-worth gets outsourced. Self-worth gets outsourced gradually. 2. Bosses. Partners. Audiences. Numbers. Results. At first, it motivates. Then it enslaves. Because now pressure controls how you feel about yourself. That's the key. Why pressure finds the cracks. Pressure looks for leverage. Self-worth based on outcomes is leverage. Pressure presses there. Remove the leverage. Pressure loses power. Detachment and self-worth. Detachment becomes possible only when self-worth is internal. If you need outcomes to feel whole, you cannot detach. If you are already whole, detachment is natural. That's why this chapter matters. Behavioral discipline. Separate worth from performance. You must practice this deliberately. After every outcome, say, "This result does not define me. Good or bad. Performance is data, not identity." Repeat it until it becomes automatic. You have a choice. Behavioral discipline. Neutralize criticism. When criticized, don't defend. Don't internalize. Don't collapse. Ask one question internally. Is there useful information here? If yes, extract it. If no, discard it. Your worth remains untouched. Behavioral discipline. Stop identity statements. Stop saying, "I am bad at this. I'm not good enough. I always mess this up." Those statements fuse identity with performance. Replace them with, "This needs work. This can improve. This is temporary." Language trains self-worth. Why calm people can fail publicly. Failure terrifies people whose worth is conditional. Calm people can fail publicly because failure doesn't threaten their core. They don't scramble to protect image. They recover. Recovery beats perfection. That's the key. Self-worth and silence. People with fragile self-worth explain. People with stable self-worth don't. They don't need to prove. They don't need to convince. They don't need to rush. Silence feels safe when worth is secure. Why self-worth creates emotional immunity. When worth is internal, insults lose power. Praise loses control. Pressure loses urgency. You still care. But you are not owned. That's unshakable calm. The long-term effect of untouchable self-worth. Over time, people test you less. Pressure decreases. Authority increases. Because nothing hooks you emotionally. Calm becomes your baseline. Repetition anchor. Say it until it replaces old programming. My worth is not negotiated. My worth is not decided by outcomes. My worth cannot be touched. You have a choice. Why this chapter changes everything. Without this chapter, silence fails. Detachment cracks. Pace collapses. Because identity pressure overrides discipline. With this chapter, everything stabilizes. That's the key. Strong transition to chapter 10. You've removed emotional leverage. You've stabilized identity. Now there's only one discipline left. Because calm is not just internal. It must be consistent. And consistency is built through daily structure. Let's end this honestly. If pressure ever made you feel smaller, this chapter was for you. You were never inadequate. You were just tying your worth to things that were never meant to carry it. From this point forward, results inform you, they don't define you. Opinions pass through, they don't stick. And pressure loses its grip when there's nothing left to threaten. Because when your self-worth can't be touched, neither can your calm. Untouchable doesn't mean emotionless. It means unshaken. Chapter 10, Discipline is the final advantage. Talent won't save you. Intelligence won't save you. Motivation won't save you. Because under pressure, none of those last. Only discipline does. When everything else collapses. When emotions rise. When stakes are high. When no one is watching. Discipline is what remains. That's the key. You have a choice. Rely on traits that fade under stress. Or build the one advantage that never leaves you. Why discipline is the difference maker. Every chapter so far has led here. Calm. Silence. Detachment. Self-worth. None of them hold without discipline. Because discipline is not a mood. It's not energy. It's not inspiration. Discipline is behavior under pressure. And pressure is where most people disappear. Why most people lose consistency. Most people can be calm sometimes. Most people can be disciplined when life is easy. But pressure exposes the truth. Stress doesn't ruin discipline. Lack of discipline is revealed by stress. That's the key. When pressure rises, people revert to defaults. Discipline installs better defaults. Discipline is boring, that's why it works. Let's be honest. Discipline is not exciting. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't give dopamine. It doesn't impress anyone immediately. It is repetitive. Predictable. Quiet. And that's exactly why it separates you. Because most people quit what doesn't stimulate them. Calm, disciplined people stay. Why emotional people hate discipline. Discipline removes emotional choice. It says, this happens whether I feel like it or not. Reactive people hate that. They want permission from emotion. Calm people don't negotiate with feelings. They execute. That's the key. Discipline is the bridge between calm and results. Calm without discipline is passive. Discipline without calm is rigid. Together, they create control. Discipline keeps you steady when motivation drops. Pressure tests motivation. Discipline ignores pressure. Real-world example, the reliable one always wins. In every organization, every industry, every team, there is the talented one. And there is the reliable one. When pressure hits, who survives? The one who shows up the same way. Regardless of mood. That person is calm. That person is trusted. That person advances. Not because they're special. Because they're disciplined. Why discipline creates predictability? Predictability is power. When people know, you won't react. You won't rush. You won't collapse. They stop testing you. Pressure seeks chaos. Discipline removes chaos. That's the key. Discipline is internal structure. Discipline replaces external pressure with internal order. You don't need reminders. You don't need supervision. You don't need urgency. You act because it's time to act. That internal structure is unshakable. Why motivation is a trap. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is mechanical. Motivation rises and falls. Discipline stays. If you wait to feel ready, pressure will always outrun you. Calm people move without permission from emotion. Behavioral discipline number 1, fixed non-negotiables. Disciplined people decide in advance. They remove choice. Example. I pause before responding. I don't explain under stress. I don't rush decisions. No debate. No emotion. Decision fatigue disappears. That's the key. Behavioral discipline number 2, same response under stress. Discipline creates consistency. Pressure does not change your behavior. It only tests it. When stressed. Same breathing. Same pace. Same restraint. People trust what doesn't change. Behavioral discipline number 3, daily calm practice. Calm must be practiced when nothing is wrong. Breathing. Silence. Stillness. These are not emergency skills. They are daily disciplines. Train when calm. So pressure doesn't surprise you. Why discipline feels restrictive at first. Discipline feels limiting to undisciplined people. Because chaos feels like freedom. But chaos is exhausting. Discipline creates freedom after consistency is built. That's the paradox. Discipline and identity. Eventually, discipline becomes identity. You're no longer trying to be calm. You are calm. Because your habits enforce it. You don't argue with yourself. You act. Why discipline protects self-worth. Discipline separates behavior from emotion. You don't spiral after mistakes. You correct and continue. That stability protects identity. That's the key. Discipline eliminates decision panic. Most stress comes from indecision. Discipline predecides behavior. So when pressure hits, there's nothing to think about. You already know what to do. Why calm people are feared, quietly. Not feared emotionally. Respected. Because disciplined people are predictable. And unpredictable at the same time. Predictable in behavior. Unpredictable in leverage. They don't crack. Pressure avoids them. Repetition anchor. Say this until it replaces hope. Discipline beats emotion. Discipline beats pressure. Discipline beats chaos. You have a choice. Every day. What happens when discipline becomes default? Over time. Fewer emotional spikes. Fewer mistakes. Fewer regrets. You don't need recovery. Because you don't collapse. That's the advantage. Why this is the final chapter? Because everything else depends on this. Without discipline, calm fades. Silence breaks. Detachment slips. Self-worth shakes. With discipline, everything holds. That's the key. Strong lead into the final closing. You now have the full system. You know how to regulate your nervous system. Control pace. Use silence. Detach from outcomes. Protect your self-worth. Enforce discipline. Nothing external needs to change now. Only execution remains. Let's end this chapter honestly. You don't need more information. You already know what to do. This book wasn't about adding ideas. It was about removing excuses. Discipline is not something you wait for. It's something you decide. Once. And then you repeat. Calm people aren't lucky. They're trained. And training always beats talent when pressure shows up. If you're still listening, you already belong here. This is where it ends. Not with motivation. Not with inspiration. Not with another idea to feel good about. It ends with responsibility. Pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the test. Calm is the answer. You stay grounded. Because calm is no longer just a skill. It's your advantage. Final reinforcement. Say it one last time. Pressure is the test. Calm is the answer. You have a choice. Every day. Every moment. This is where it ends. Not with motivation. Not with inspiration. But with responsibility. Because now you know something most people never learn. Pressure is the test. Calm is the answer. From this point forward, every stressful moment asks you the same question. Will you react, or will you respond? Will emotion decide, or will discipline decide? The world is quietly watching how you behave under stress. Calm people don't demand control. They naturally receive it. Because composure creates trust. And trust creates opportunity. You don't rise by being louder. You rise by being steadier. And the truth is simple. The future belongs to those who can remain calm, while everyone else loses themselves. So here is your challenge. The next time pressure hits, and it will, pause. Slow your breathing. Slow your speech. Slow your movement. Let others rush. Let others react. Let's end this honestly. You're not leaving this audiobook as someone new. You're leaving it as someone aware. Aware of your patterns. Aware of your reactions. Aware of your power to pause. You will still feel stress. You will still feel emotion. That's human. But now, you don't have to obey it. And that changes everything. If this audiobook helped you, we invite you to leave a comment and share what stood out to you. We're genuinely glad you spent this time here. Training focus, discipline, and composure. If you'd like to support this work, please like and subscribe, so you don't miss the next audiobooks coming soon. Thank you for listening. Move quietly. Stay disciplined.